Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Puro, and I'm Vice President of Safety and Technology Policy here at Auto Innovators. For those of you who don't know, Auto Innovators represents the manufacturers that produce most of the cars and light trucks sold in the United States, as well as battery suppliers, battery makers, technology companies, and other value chain partners in the United States. The automotive industry is the nation's largest manufacturing sector. Our member companies are innovating in all sorts of ways, and they have developed and are developing technologies to keep drivers engaged, attentive, and safe. Safe vehicles are one prong of a safe system approach to roadway safety, and auto manufacturers and suppliers are developing in-vehicle technologies to keep all users, drivers, pedestrians, cyclists, safe on our roadways. In fact, during a recent event on distracted driving at the United States Department of Transportation, data was presented suggesting that roughly 50% of drivers were distracted in the minute before a crash. They were distracted from the driving task in some way, not just cell phones, from picking up an item off the floor or telling their kids not to fight in the back seat. The issue of attention to the driving task is key to safety of our road users, and it's a significant issue that our panelists and their companies are working on to help solve. I'm really excited to explore some of these technologies today with our panelists. Let me introduce them. First, we have Ruchi Alawalia from Harman. We have Daniel Glazer and E. Glazer from General Motors. We have Kristen Kingsley from the Automotive Coalition for Traffic Safety, and Mike Rowe from Autolive. I want to give them the opportunity to tell us a little bit about the cool things that they are part of, that their companies have and are developing. I will start with Ruchi at Harman. Can you tell me about Harman and what technologies the company has developed to keep drivers alert, engaged, and safe?
Thank you, Sarah. Absolutely. So Harman Automotive, being a global leader in connected in-cabin experience technology, is leading the forefront on curbing distracted driving and other elements that may cause crashes or harm either the passengers in the vehicle or outside of their environment. Our DMS product, known as ReadyCare, was awarded Fast Company's 2023 Innovation by Design Award for our efforts to improve driver safety and well-being. We are leading the way of developing smarter and more intuitive DMS technology to intentionally support the driver in making sure that they can have preventive information when they are distracted or in drowsy driving environment. The Harman ReadyCare technology is uniquely positioned by offering distinct features combining intelligent machine learning algorithms and in-vehicle sensors to detect a driver's state and propose a personalized in-vehicle cabin response to mitigate these safety risks. Our technology also enables easy and low-cost adoptions for other DMS functions.
Thanks, Ruchi. Now I'm going to move over to Daniel and E. Can you tell me about the work that GM is doing to keep drivers engaged and safe?
Sure, maybe I'll go ahead and start. So I'm Dan Glazer. I've worked at GM for 13 years now. I'm what you might call the distraction lead or chief distraction mitigator. So I would say much of the work kind of historically in GM about kind of limiting distraction has been kind of in the infotainment system. So much of my work is in collaboration with other parts of the company that want to put highly desired features in the vehicle, which is a good instinct, but how do we do that, say, staying true to our commitments to industry and internal distraction guidelines, and maintain our lab processes so that we know what we're predicting on road is, what we're seeing in the lab is predicting what's happening on road. And this is an ongoing conversation. I mean, I think everyone knows that in the last 13 years, screens have gotten bigger and more capable, and so have phones. And so some of the pros to this is that, now we have kind of big visible camera views for navigation, and we can make interface elements bigger and more visible, bigger targets when traversing screens. And we have challenges that we can put a whole lot of information on the screen, and how does that impact eyes off road time? So bottom line, I kind of lead the committee that signs off on the infotainment functionality from a distraction angle. Okay, so this is kind of more legacy, how we've been dealing with distraction, along with, say, a number of driver assistance features. But kind of more recently, the last handful of years, right, we've moved into kind of this new driver state detection technologies, and there are more attitudes about, what we should be doing with driver states like distractions. So my role has extended to researching and being part of a development team for real-time driver state detection and risk mitigation features. And so GM's been doing this with Super Cruise for a really long time, for several years now with eGlazer, and she'll elaborate on that. But starting in model year 24, we voluntarily started offering this functionality during manual driving. And this feature is called Driver Attention Assist, and it detects and warns drivers about elevated levels of drowsiness and distraction.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Sarah. I'm E. Hi, everyone. So my work is similar to Daniel's, is also related to driver vehicle interface, but my focus more on impact of systems and features on driver performance of the driving tasks. Most of my work is related to ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. So one of these systems we work on is Super Cruise. Super Cruise is a hands-free driver assistance system. It does have a driver monitoring system, which uses a camera mounted to the steering column with IR emitters. And this camera monitors driver's gaze location and head pose to determine where driver is paying attention to. Once the system is detected that driver is not paying sufficient attention to the forward road, it will trigger alerts. And we design the alert, we use an alert escalation strategy. So it starts with alerts initially. If the driver does not respond to the initial stage alert, it will escalate to a more salient alert and require more responses. And under some conditions, the system locks the user out and even call on stars. And the alert HMIs are designed to be intuitive so that the drivers can quickly and easily learn what is the proper way to use the system safely. So thank you.
Thanks, E. And for those folks who may be watching who aren't immersed in automotive technology, I should probably clarify HMI are a human machine interface, and DMS are driver monitoring systems. They're exactly what they sound like, and our companies are doing a lot of really interesting things and testing around the human machine interface to reduce distraction, and developing processes through which the cameras can monitor drivers and passengers. But now I'll send it over to Kristen Kingsley, whose company Axe is working on a somewhat different type of technology to keep drivers safe. Kristen?
Hi, everyone. Sarah, thanks so much for hosting us today. I'm looking forward to this discussion, and I'm glad to be a part of it. The Automotive Coalition for Traffic Safety is comprised of the world's leading automakers. Many have the same members as auto innovators. Under cooperative agreement with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, we're developing a first-of-its-kind in-vehicle technology to detect and prevent drunk driving. It's called the DADS program, Driver Alcohol Detection System for Safety.
Thank you. And then I will let Mike talk about the work that Autolive is doing.
Thank you, Sarah. So Autolive is one of the world's premier automotive safety companies. So we are involved in very, I would say, near-term safety applications when it comes to autonomous and distracted driving, as well as a lot of future applications. So we're primarily known for our steering wheels and our seat belts. And just to highlight a few interesting things, and I'm sure we can touch on them later on, right? What is the role of the steering wheel? What is the role of the seat belt? So E talked about an escalation strategy. So how can the seatbelt be used to tell the driver to take back over control? Is it more effective than an audio or a visual warning? So Autoliv participates in a lot of research within the industry. We work with all of the global OEMs to, I would say, make partial autonomy safer. In partial autonomy, believe it or not, there's a lot of drivers who are still trying to use these features and be distracted while doing it. So a lot of work there, as well as the steering wheel itself. We see that it's growing in importance. So how do we know that the driver's eyes are on the road, hands are on the wheel? And then how does this play into an overall driver monitoring system? It's a sensing and monitoring system. I think of sensors as part of an overall DMS strategy. So we'll get into more details later on, but this is where Autoliv is currently engaged, I would say, in the near term in improving the safety of all drivers, whether it's partial autonomy or not.
Great, thanks. So some of you told us a little bit about how your systems work, but I definitely want to go back to Kristen to hear a little bit more about how the DAD system works. Kristen.
Yeah, under the DADS program, we're developing two different technologies, a breath-based system and a touch-based system, and they both use infrared spectroscopy to measure alcohol concentration. They're both being designed to be fast, accurate, and reliable, and to last for the lifetime of the vehicle. And they are designed to be integrated in such a way that they can differentiate between a passenger and a driver.
Can you help folks know what infrared spectrometry is?
Infrared spectroscopy is basically a laser that's being shined through, for the case of the breath system, it's measuring carbon dioxide concentration and comparing that with ethanol concentration to make a determination of whether or not the driver is impaired. And similarly with the touch-based system, we're using an infrared light to look beneath the surface of the skin to determine alcohol concentration there.
Very cool. Mike, can you tell us a little bit about how the technology that Autoliv is developing for steering wheels and seatbelts works in practice?
Yeah, certainly. For the steering wheel, right, that is the lateral control device of the vehicle. And research shows once the driver gives up lateral control, they tend to check out cognitively, right? And they're using less of their cognitive load for driving tasks. So there's a couple things on the steering wheel side, I would say. The most basic one is not to be a nag, but eliminating steering wheel nag. So how do we do this? This is through direct sensing that's not based on the torque sensor. And this does improve safety and the user experience. We want to eliminate, I would say, check behaviors where the driver tugs on the steering wheel or the driver just glances at the road and then continues, I guess, to be allowed to use partial autonomy features while they're really not properly engaged. We also like light bars, and the research shows us. So a light bar would be on the steering wheel itself at the 12 o'clock position because we want the eyes up near the road. And this is telling the driver whether or not the partial autonomy system is engaged, disengaged, or in a collaborative driving mode, which is also very important. And as we see future levels of autonomy and we see future cockpit trends, so immersive pillar-to-pillar displays and these types of things, we see the importance of the steering wheel rising, and then thus the importance of the light bar. So it's very important for the driver to know what the status of the autonomous system is. And very similar to blind spot detection being on the side view mirror, the driver is going to look at the lateral control device to see the status of the system. And when you start looking ahead and you look at different vehicle seating positions and these types of things, when the driver needs to take control, that's likely where they're going to look first. And the research shows from an HMI, human machine interface and human factors perspective, that this does make a lot of sense. So those are, I would say, the main things we're doing on the steering wheel, as well as, you know, the integration of the DMS. Could this also be in the steering wheel itself? It's certainly a possibility, and it certainly would give, I would say, OEMs a lot more design freedom as we see future cockpit designs even going towards heads-up displays and these types of things. So when it comes to steering wheel, I would say that was a pretty broad overview, and I won't mention some more advanced development topics.
Great, thanks, Mike. Well, you mentioned DMS technology, so I'm going to go over to Ruchi and ask her to talk a little bit more about some of the cameras and how those cameras work in the Harman system. Ruchi?
Sure, thank you, Sarah. So the cameras are absolutely an integral part of every vehicle, and they're the part of our ReadyCare technology, but our ReadyCare technology is more than that. With our mantra of eyes on road and mind on road, it really is about using our neuroscience and behavioral technologies that we've created and have patented that allows us to detect real-time distraction, drowsiness, and stress. So it's more than just being distracted. Other things that you may be experiencing while you're driving, such as stress or being distracted by something else, can cause to safety concerns and other issues. We make sure that we can understand these aspects through the camera. We can detect with whether you're daydreaming, whether you're looking at a billboard, and just those seconds when your eyes leave the windshield can cause safety concerns. And the best thing that we are able to do is in real time, then we can offer responses to help the driver. We can change the haptics, we can change the HVAC. We are integrated into the audio system of a domain controller and provide feedback, whether it's beeps or even to the point of saying, hey, listen to your favorite playlist because you're getting drowsy. All of these things are interrelated and can be leveraged in the ReadyCare solution. We've done significant amount of testing to perfect our real-time solution and being able to allow a closed loop system working rest of the vehicle architecture to make sure that we keep our occupants safe.
Great, thank you. I want to turn over to GM now and talk about ADAS technologies. We've seen some data from IIHS, from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, one of the key safety stakeholders, that ADAS technologies are a convenience feature. How does GM assess the safety effects of your technology? Do you have any additional data that shows how your technology creates a safety benefit?
Yeah, I'll take that question. So I think the work in terms of how we really research and develop a system, it's a long, thorough process. And one thing to answer Sarah's question in terms of the field study, all the pre-production work that's been done is very important, very thorough. And then once the product is in the field, it's if not more important to closely monitor the impact of the system in the field in terms of safety and usage. So I'll say the challenge of the pre-production research is one thing. It's although we try the best we can, but it's very difficult to really understand real-world usage of the system. And another aspect is challenging to understand long-term adaptation. And from the safety perspective, many of the pre-production research are highly rely on surrogate measures, meaning crashes really happen very rarely, right? So we look at events such as heartbreaking that may be related to crashes pre-production, but we really don't, as a field, I think for some crash types may be more related, but we don't really have a very good understanding how these surrogate measures related to real world risk. So that's where the field data really played a very important role. So as Sarah mentioned, there are some IIHS work that's recently published regarding partial driving automation systems and using insurance claims and police reported data. And GM, we did our own work in collaboration with University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute. We also looked at police reported data related to Super Cruise usage. So the general finding so far, we have consistent finding is we haven't seen any effects, either positive or negative, related to either claims or police reported crashes. But I want to make a point here. ADAS systems, the usage level of the ADAS system in the market so far is still relatively low. That has many factors, for example, where the system operates, etc. So it will take some time to really observe if any safety impact, either positive or negative. So I think it's a continuous effort. We, as a field, we should continuously monitor and try to understand better how these systems are used in the field, and with accumulated data, more driving using these systems, we may have better understanding of what's the impact in the field. So.
Great, thank you, E. Does anyone else want to weigh in about how you assess the benefits of your technologies?
Well, I think just to add what E said, right, the usage needs to be higher, right? And it makes a lot of sense, I would say, to study partial autonomy systems and get this naturalistic driving behavior. How can we measure this, and then how can we assess it, and then how can we counteract this to have a distraction? So I think partial autonomy systems, you have a much better opportunity. You can have maybe the DMS cameras in place and the sensors in place to really start to capture this data. And I think we'll talk about privacy and some other things coming up, and consumer adoptance and consumer trust. But to really, we have the anecdotal evidence, it's intuitive, but we need more, I would say, field study and data from actual usage.
I agree, Sarah. We do the same thing. It is all about gathering the data. We look at the global population within Harman, using them as testers, putting inside our POCs and cars that have our Ready Care system to collect as much data as we can. We know there's behavioral, there's humanity aspects to it. You can't create just one system that fits all without having a huge amount of data. So the more we can get out in the field and test, the more data we can collect and really start to be more accurate, not just for the global population, but for the actual driver that's in the car.
Kristen?
For passenger vehicles or commercially available, but we're doing a significant amount of human subject testing on the road. And something that I think is important for folks to consider is we're looking at accuracy of the system right now. How can we minimize false positives, false negatives? But when you look at potential benefits of a crash avoidance technology, there are a few factors that come into play. One is, what is your target population? And with drunk driving, it's a very large target population, more than 10,000 lives per year. It's 1/3 of the roadway fatality problem in the United States. And then you multiply your target population by your effectiveness. And by effectiveness, I mean a combination of how accurate is the system that you've designed. Is it doing what you've designed it to do? And then if it is doing what you've designed it to do, is it eliciting the response that you need from a driver, if there is a driver in the loop? And something that we're working on in the DADS program is trying to take that driver out of the loop. If we detect alcohol impaired driving before the vehicle is set in motion, then we don't have to worry how the driver will respond, because we are going to prevent them from moving to begin with. So right now, as we focus on accuracy, we are basically laser focused on that target population, which is very large. And we think that there's a lot of potential for this. We also think that there's even greater potential when you combine systems such as DADS with driver monitoring that can detect other forms of impairment, like from drug driving or distraction or even drowsiness.
Thanks to you all. One of the things I heard you all say is we need data. We use data, and that's how we make these systems better. I think we hear sometimes that the public can be concerned about data collection, and they can also be concerned with new technologies being put on their vehicles. We certainly are concerned about issues of consumer acceptance. So what kind of challenges do you see with respect to public policy and consumer acceptance of your technology? And Kristen is smiling, and she and I have talked about the DADS technology for quite some time. So I'm going to go to her first, and then I'll move on to the other folks.
Thanks, Sarah. And you can imagine that consumer acceptance really is important here. With the DADS program and other alcohol detection technologies and even broader impairment detection, through the bipartisan infrastructure law, Congress mandated that NHTSA issue a rulemaking to require advanced impaired driving detection technology in new vehicles, and if detected, to prevent or to limit vehicle motion. DADS technology so far shows the most promise in meeting those specific objectives within the time frame set out by the mandate. But like you said, consumer acceptance is key to broad deployment of new technologies, and that's true even with a mandate. In addition to designing the technology to be fast, accurate, and reliable, we're developing technology that's intended to not hassle an unimpaired driver. In order to do this, we have to work to minimize false positives, but we must also design the technology to respect consumer privacy. DADS is working to incorporate recommendations from the Future of Privacy Forum's Spring 2024 report and avoid data being stored or transmitted outside the vehicle in order for the technology to work.
That's a lot. So thank you for that. Ruchi, can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges you see with consumer acceptance of driver monitoring systems?
Absolutely. I think it is very personal data. We see a lot of concern from our consumers on where is the data stored. Is my raw data similar to having a fitness watch, right? I control the data. I don't want anybody else to see it. We do our best of not storing any of the raw data. We real-time process it to be consumable in whether we're detecting drowsiness or distraction or stress. But it is the acceptance on the output and the accuracy of it, knowing that there is something actionable that I can do with the fact that I am drowsy. And we see that as a big hurdle for us to get over, is the acceptance that the vehicle is giving you information and they may actually give you preferences on to take some action. I think it's going to be it's a hurdle that consumers actually want to know that they're distracted and do something about it. But I think like any new technologies in the automotive industry, once it's there, we think that it will snowball into full adoption. But that's why Harman is working with policymakers to roll out with similar acts that Kristen has mentioned, that there does need to be some baseline measures. We need to be able to have a baseline of what does driver distraction mean and how we can make sure the driver takes action. In addition, we know that NCAP out of Europe is taking a very strong stance on distraction, and we need to work together with our US counterparts to make sure that we can drive this forward.
That's a really good point, that the harmonization with Europe and other parts of the world is something that we here in the global auto industry often look toward and ask for. I'm going to turn to the folks at GM because they are selling an entire vehicle and not just a component of it. And can you talk a little bit about some of the public policy challenges and issues that you see around consumer acceptance?
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to consumer acceptance, it's important that we think about what does a successful feature mean? And I think car companies, customers, safety ratings, entities, and regulators all want it to be successful. So I think some good guiding principles for what a success in a feature category is, we want customers to find it useful. We want them to keep it on. So when the feature does its thing, ideally the driver goes, huh, thanks car for, helping me out. I didn't see that coming. And, whatever the vehicle actually did, it actually reduces driver risk, in the moment. And even better, it improves behavior over time. And so I think just thinking we want to detect this and do something about it is not thinking deeply enough. And so we really need to think about the detection, what we're detecting, what we should detect, and the mitigation. So it takes a lot of exploration, both kind of before it's released and also understanding what's happening after it's released to really get there. And if we're a little too early in enforcing these kinds of features, we're likely to get what I would say like a cry wolf effect. So even if you force it on, drivers will start to ignore it because it's not detecting necessarily what it should be detecting, and it almost becomes like a distraction or something that detracts from safety. And so, what I would encourage regulators to think about is how do I know that what I'm prescribing, and hopefully it's not too narrow, is causing more good than harm? What is my evidence for this? And how can I promote this new technology that can improve safety, but do it in a way that provides space and motivation to learn and explore and stay curious, and seek better implementations? Keep the car manufacturers interested in making the feature better and having that space to do it.
Yeah, and if I may, I think NCAP can play that role. And to Rushi's point about European NCAP asking or automakers to do work on distraction. NHTSA hasn't really updated NCAP in many years, and so that is a tool that can be used to help incentivize technologies, but allow for a variety of different types of solutions from different automakers, with the acknowledgement that there is something that can be done on the vehicle side. Mike, you supply many different OEMs. So how do you think about public policy and consumer acceptance in the specifics of the technologies that you're developing?
Well, when I think of partial autonomy, right, that's mainly where we're at now. Each OEM has a partial autonomy system. The driver is supposed to supervise. I think some of these early implementations, some of these systems were more trickable than others. And I certainly don't want to be on the road with someone tricking their partial autonomy system and over trusting that, because ultimately the liability is with the driver, and the driver shouldn't be distracted. And we have to combat this to keep all vulnerable road users safe, as well as all the drivers and passengers on the road. But when I think of this, what is the most likely thing that a consumer would do that's concerned about privacy? They would likely cover the camera. So it's very interesting to know how these systems are designed and the effect that would have. And as Ruchi pointed out, right, is the ECU setting the head pose and the gaze classification, that information to the vehicle, or is it sending images to an onboard computer, or is that vehicle connected to the cloud? I think consumers need to know what's being done with that information. And I think if you think about an intermediate step, direct hand sensing, which is typically capacitive hand sensing, I think is very important because this is something that is more privacy friendly and it's equitable. So it generally works for everyone, which is great. And when I think about the future and you think about future levels of autonomy, I think hand sensing is very good. This is something that could even be added to an event data recorder to know if there isn't an unfortunate event that occurs, were the driver's hands on the wheel or not. And this could help clarify liability and also, I would say, alleviate a lot of users' privacy concerns.
Great, thank you. So Ruchi did sort of allude to what's going on in Europe, but I'm curious for your perspectives on the landscape in the United States for these technologies that do keep drivers focused and attentive. How does the landscape differ from other countries that you work with with your companies?
So sure, absolutely. So I think what we are seeing globally is the adoption of DMS cameras, the sensors, and having this basic understanding of where the state of the driver is in every market, whether it's India, China, Europe, or US. We are starting to see that vehicles that are going to roll out in the next couple of years, from the lowest tier segment, small vehicles to the premium, of course. They understand how important having DMS sensors, cameras, and the software products that go with it, how important that is. I believe that all of our customers, as GM is one of them, we are bound to this mission of providing safety on the road. And we need to do what we can to make sure that we deliver on that promise. We are this is a tagline, but we are in the business of serving lives and keeping lives safe. And that's why we want to do eyes forward, mind forward. And Harman's committed to having more and more technologies that keep the driver and their passengers safe.
Thank you. Daniel or E, do you want to weigh in on how GM is navigating some of the differences in landscapes across the globe?
Sure. Well, I can say that certainly having a feature regulated in Europe can help to spur action in the US. So like I said, we voluntarily started to include driver attention assist, which is a drowsiness and distraction detection and mitigation feature. But first kind of we designed that system to meet requirements in Europe. So there are certainly some spillovers, and then we can use that work and bring it over to the US. But otherwise, I think Europe does do things at slightly different speeds. If I'm correct, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, there's been more resistance to kind of hands-off automation, for instance, but they've been faster, for instance, to say allow for outside rear view mirror replacements with displays and cameras. So it is interesting how we're synced a little bit differently, but I would say in general, Europe is a little more aggressive in kind of adopting new technologies.
Yeah, just quickly to add to Dan's points, I think we are developing the system that we think is providing the best value to the customers. And in order to bring those values to more customers, we do need to meet different regional regulations and other consumer metrics requirements. But I think these are all for the purpose of getting a good product in more customers' hands.
Thanks. Now, Mike, Autoliv is a Scandinavian company. How do you see the landscape differing?
Well, I would say emphasis on safety. We're talking about distraction here, but I would say a good example would be Autoliv. So we have an electric seatbelt. We call it the pre-tensioning mechatronics integrated, the PPMI. We have over 50 million of these in the field. The reason for that is because if you have pre-crash braking or braking before a crash, the occupant can be out of position, and then this would then, I would say, position the occupant more optimally in case the point of no return is met. When we look at, I would say, the interest and the adoptance, this did happen much quicker in Europe. But I would say on the positive side, we see more and more interest in this product for haptic reasons, for autonomous driving. So We can do vital sign detection, some heart rate monitoring. We can do occupant sizing and positioning and occupant classification for more adaptive safety. But we see a lot more interest for driver distraction, making sure that the driver's engaged. So we could be quite aggressive with the seatbelt, even, take the driver and push them towards the back of the seat to tell them to take control if a critical situation occurs. But I would say, in Euro NCAP, yes, there's a roadmap, I would say, and there's a more, I guess, eagerness for public adoptance of new safety features. But I'm hopeful that this can be cascaded, and the U.S. And the NCAP will also, I would say, progress so we can get more of these safety features in vehicles in North America.
Thanks.
I'd like to second what Mike said about Euro NCAP's roadmap and the importance of transparency. I think it's very helpful for us when we're working on cutting edge technologies to get an understanding of what they understand and what they perceive, what they anticipate. And with DMS, they've made it very clear through Euro NCAP that they do expect future innovation to allow DMS to detect alcohol impaired driving. And so they're contemplating that, they're gathering input on that, and it's signaling to everyone that it's coming. And that's not the only way that Europe is ahead of the US and other places on drunk driving. Their BAC limits are much lower than what we see here. But recently, with the mandate for advanced impaired driving technologies in the US, now the US is taking a more aggressive stance than Europe on drunk driving. Europe does have a requirement for a portal that facilitates aftermarket integration of an alcohol interlock, but that is very different from what we are developing under the DADS program, which is intended to be original equipment. It's intended to be crash avoidance technology and not a punitive device.
I think you make a really good point about the transparency of the rules and regulations, that if you can see where the regulator is going, that then you have something to design to, and it helps create a certain level of certainty for companies. I think to some extent we're lacking a little bit of that in the U.S. as NCAP hasn't been updated recently, and definitely would love to see that come out of NHTSA soon. I think we have time for maybe one more question. If you just had a message for public policymakers and the public in general about your technology or about safety technologies and how they get developed, what takeaway message would you have?
So for Harman, I think the bottom line for us is action is needed now to ensure any technologies that can be integrated and benefit are ultimately in all vehicles on the road, to prevent accidents, to reverse crashes, injuries, anything. And Harman strongly believes that NHTSA should act quickly to establish these standards and facilitate this deployment of DMS and other technologies to serve the public. Our call to the public is to demand this. There's too many of these fatalities that happen, and the consumers should demand this of their vehicles.
Thank you. Mike?
Similar to what Ruchi said, it's, for selling cars in this market, it's a cost benefit analysis. So what features are customers willing to pay for? A lot of those things, we don't want them to be features that contribute to distraction. We want to see a greater, I would say, priority on safety. And this includes distracted driving. And I would say it absolutely breaks my heart to see the distraction on the roadway, I would say, on a daily basis. So working to combat this through, I would say, features in the vehicle. Of course, public education campaigns is very, very important. And I think these features and the functions, taking a system integration approach of the overall vehicle, how can we combat a distraction? These are going to be the functional building blocks, I would say, for all future levels of autonomy. And I think when you look at automotive advancement, technology advancement, it's typically iterative. And I think we need to at least start to make those first iterations. We don't know, what the end answer will be in every case, right? We want to continue, I would say, to enhance the vehicle to prevent distraction. We want to continue to collect data. And I don't condone, distracted driving, impaired driving, drowsy driving. And I certainly don't condone, I would say, improper usage or partial autonomy. But I think where the market is going, like the questions we have to consider is really what is, I would say, more safe? Is it hands-free driving, or is it performing a secondary task and being distracted? Well, neither should be, I would say, in place on the road, but I think we will get to the point where it will be hands-free driving, hopefully with the driver supervising. We need to find a way to make this safe. We need to make it deployable for all so we can have the benefit and start thinking about how do we make safety critical HMI, human machine interface, similar across vehicles to help combat driver distraction. So I think a lot of the ideas that Harman's working on, right? We want to limit features in the vehicle if, if the driver's not buckled up, if the driver's not engaged, and to, what Kristen's talking about, maybe not make the vehicle be able to operate if the driver is impaired. So I think there's a lot of work to do in the short term, and I don't want that to be overlooked because we can make there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, I would say, that we can make progress on.
Thanks, Mike. Daniel and E?
Sure. Yeah. I'd like to point out because we did talk a lot about field data and discovering things about the features after it's released. We do a lot of work prior to the release of a feature. Maybe this has been mentioned, but I'll reiterate. So we have a buffet of ways that we assess, develop features, including surveys to kind of understand subjective attitudes, for more objective measures with simulators, controlled test tracks, even limited field tests. And we also, the GM development team gets a lot of time with features as well. And so all of this learning kind of goes into a nice resource pool in creating engineering decisions. But what I also want the public to know is that something like a driver attention assist feature, which is relatively new in terms of having this feature available for manual driving that involves a camera, is try it out, have a little bit of curiosity, kind of have an open mind at how maybe it can make you safer. I think it's an early feature. Some of these, the thresholds are set to be pretty extreme. So if you are kind of setting off these alerts, there is something kind of extreme about your driving that you may want to correct. I would say this could be particularly useful for teens that are kind of calibrating their skills or new drivers. And at the very least, you might want to use it selectively. So you're on a long road trip, which involves, driving a long time at night. Why not turn on a feature that can warn you if you're about to fall asleep? So I just encourage a little bit of an open mind as these features start to develop, and think about how maybe it can help you be a safer driver, which helps you and others on the road.
Thank you.
Yeah.
E?
Yeah, so regarding partial automation, I think we have been saying this repeatedly in this session is the proper use is driver needs to always pay attention to the road and always be ready to take control. One thing I do want to point out is there is a large variation of partial automation systems in the market. There are definitely many perspectives. For example, some system may have more limited operational design domain, like Super Cruise. Super Cruise only operates on roads with high definition maps, but other systems may have broader domains, or some systems are designed to be used hands-free, like Super Cruise, but there are also many hands-on systems in the market. From our research, we do see that driver use these systems differently, they behave differently. Due to many reasons, I think we certainly need more research to understand what aspect of these systems lead to these differences in driver behavior. But I think what my point is, we believe there is no one-size-fits-all solution in terms of HMI, DMS, and broader system design. Each system needs to be designed to promote its unique proper use. So we just hope that will be considered by the regulators with these variations. One solution that may work very well for one system may not be necessary for another and lead to driver acceptance issues.
Thank you. And Kristen, the last word.
Thanks. I have 2 points that I'd like to emphasize. One is for policymakers and the other is for the general public. Once fully deployed, DAD's technology is estimated to help save more than 10,000 lives per year, but we need to get it right because public acceptance is key to our success. And for the public, vehicle technologies are an important component to the safe system approach, but we need to make sure that drivers remain engaged and understand that they are responsible for driving safely, in particular, driving unimpaired.
Great, thank you. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today and for your perspectives on how we keep drivers safe. There are so many really cool things that auto companies and suppliers are doing to help drivers stay safe on the road. But as Kristen said, right now it's help. And folks need to remain engaged and use the tools that are available to them as we continue to develop additional technologies to help drivers. Certainly, there's a role to play for NHTSA in helping to incentivize some of these technologies and to make them more available and to help consumers understand what these technologies can and cannot do. But also, these technologies can't be regulated by NHTSA without the work that you have done to make them reality. And so we are doing this work to make drivers and driving and vulnerable road users safer. And that's the goal. So thank you very much for helping folks understand a little bit more about automotive technology and safety. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah.